I'm Gabriel, 32 years old, and watching the roof of my house collapse into a sparking inferno was the second worst thing that happened to me that night. Before I tell you about the text message that felt better than a winning lottery ticket, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I want to know who is standing in my corner. The heat was enough to singe the hair on my arms, but I felt freezing cold. It was a bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the temperature and everything to do with the realization that 5 years of my life were evaporating into black smoke. The sirens wailed in the distance, a useless, mocking sound. By the time the fire truck turned the corner onto Oak Street, the timber frame of the small cabin I had restored with my own hands was already groaning, ready to give up the ghost. I stood in the driveway, clutching a plastic bag. That was it. That was my net worth. A pair of work boots, a laptop with a cracked screen, and the shirt on my back. The smell of burning pine and melting siding filled my lungs, choking me. A firefighter pushed me back toward the street. "Sir, you need to step back. The gas line might go." I stumbled backward, my boots scuffing against the asphalt. My knees hit the curb and I just sat there. I watched the flames lick the night sky, devouring the porch where I drank my coffee every morning. I watched the window of my home office explode outward, showering the lawn with glass. My blueprints, my sketches, my portfolio, gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 12% battery. I stared at the screen. It was 8:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over Dad. We hadn't spoken in 3 months. Not since I refused to co-sign a loan for Caleb's new business venture, a vape shop that everyone knew would fail within a quarter. But this was an emergency. This was rock bottom. Family steps up when the world burns down, right? That's what they sell you in the movies. That's the American dream. I pressed call. It rang 4 times. I could picture him checking the caller ID, sighing, deciding if I was worth the effort. Finally, the line clicked open. Gabriel. His voice was loud, competing with the ambient noise of a busy room. "Make it quick. We're in the middle of dinner." "Dad." My voice cracked. I coughed, clearing the smoke from my throat. "Dad, the house. It's gone." "What do you mean gone?" he asked, sounding more annoyed than concerned. I heard the clatter of silverware on ceramic plates. Laughter in the background. Fire. Everything is burning. I'm sitting on the curb. I lost everything. I took a shaky breath, trying to keep the hysteria at bay. "I don't have anywhere to go. Can I crash on the couch tonight? Just for a night or two until I figure out insurance." There was a pause. I held my breath. I needed him to say yes. I needed him to be a father. "Look, Gabriel," he said, his tone shifting to that condescending pitch he reserved for when I was being unreasonable. "That's really unfortunate. Really. But tonight isn't good. We're at the Golden Crab Buffet celebrating." "Celebrating?" I looked up at my burning house. "Celebrating what?" "Caleb got the new Lamborghini Huracan. The green one. We're toasting to his success. If you come over smelling like smoke and ruin, you're gonna kill the vibe. You know how sensitive your mother is to bad smells." I blinked, ash falling on my eyelashes. "Dad, I have no money. My wallet was on the dresser. It's inside the fire." He laughed, a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "You're 32, Gabriel. Figure it out. Get a hotel. Put it on a credit card. We can't host you right now. We're at a buffet with your brother. Don't be dramatic." "Dad, please, gotta go. The crab legs are being refilled." Click. The silence that followed was louder than the roaring fire. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. He hung up. My house was burning down and he hung up to get crab legs. I looked down at my phone again. A notification popped up from Instagram. It was Caleb. He had just posted a story. I tapped it. There he was, grinning like a shark, holding a champagne flute. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my car. Behind him, through the window of the restaurant, I could see the lime green Lamborghini parked directly under a street lamp, gleaming. Dad was next to him, holding up a lobster claw, looking red-faced and joyous. Mom was laughing, her head thrown back, pearls bouncing on her neck. The caption read, "New wheels, new levels. Success runs in the DNA. Hashtag Lamborghini, hashtag blessed, hashtag family first. Family first." I felt something break inside my chest. It wasn't my heart. It was the tether. The heavy, rusted chain of obligation I had been dragging around for 3 decades finally snapped. "Sir." The firefighter was back. He looked at me with pity. I hated that look. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Red Cross is on the way." "But..." "No," I said, standing up. My legs felt numb. "I don't have anywhere. I don't have anyone." I started walking. I didn't know where. I just walked away from the heat, into the cold darkness of the suburbs. I walked past the neighbors who were filming my misery on their iPhones. I walked until the sirens faded. I ended up at the downtown bus terminal. It was a concrete box that smelled of diesel and stale urine. I sat on a plastic bench, hugging my knees. I had $20 tucked into my phone case for emergencies. That wouldn't get me a hotel room. Not in this city. I bought a bottle of water and a sandwich from a vending machine. I ate it slowly, trying to make it last. Around midnight, a security guard told me I couldn't sleep on the bench. He gave me the address of a men's shelter 6 blocks away. "It's not the Ritz," he said, eyeing my soot-stained clothes. "But it's warm." The shelter was a converted warehouse. It smelled of bleach and unwashed bodies. I waited in line for 40 minutes to get a cot. The volunteer, a kind woman with gray hair, handed me a thin blanket and a hygiene kit with a tiny toothbrush. "First time?" she asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. "Keep your shoes on," she whispered, "and put your phone in your underwear. Things walk away in the night." I found my cot. It was sandwiched between a man coughing a wet, hacking cough and a teenager who looked terrified. I lay down on the thin mattress. The ceiling was high and dark, crisscrossed with pipes. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept seeing the fire. I kept hearing Dad's laugh. Get a hotel. I thought about Caleb driving that Lamborghini home tonight. He'd park it in the heated garage of the sprawling estate Dad bought 5 years ago. He'd sleep in silk sheets. He'd wake up to a breakfast prepared by the housekeeper. He had never worked a hard day in his life. Everything was handed to him. The cars, the college tuition, the fake manager jobs at Dad's company where he just played golf. Me? I was the mistake. The second son. The one who wanted to be an architect instead of taking over the family's logistics business. I worked construction to pay for school. I drove a 10-year-old truck. I built my life brick by brick, and tonight, I watched it all turn to dust. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again. For percent battery. I checked it, praying it was Dad calling back to say he made a mistake. That he was coming to get me. It was a text from Mom. "Did you handle your situation? Dad says you were being hysterical. Don't ruin Caleb's night by posting anything sad on Facebook. We have investors watching his profile." I stared at the glowing screen until the words blurred. Hysterical. Don't ruin Caleb's night. I didn't reply. I turned the phone off. I pulled the scratchy shelter blanket up to my chin. I was surrounded by strangers, breathing in air that tasted of despair. But for the first time in my life, the picture was crystal clear. I wasn't part of their family. I was just a prop they used to make themselves feel better, or a nuisance they ignored when I wasn't useful. "Okay," I whispered into the darkness. "Okay." That night, lying on a cot in a room full of broken men, Gabriel the son died, and someone else began to wake up. The next morning, the reality of homelessness hit me like a physical blow. You don't realize how much you take for granted. A shower, a closet, a coffee pot, until they're gone. I washed my face in the communal sink, trying to scrub the soot from my neck with a bar of gritty soap. The man next to me, who introduced himself as Detroit, offered me a comb. "You look like you fought a chimney and lost, kid," he said. "Feels like it," I muttered. I left the shelter at 7 a.m. You couldn't stay during the day. I had nowhere to go. My job site was across town, and I had no tools, no car, and no clean clothes. I called my boss from a payphone using my last quarters. I can't come in, I said. My house burned down. Geez, Gabe. I'm sorry, Mike said. Take the week. But, look, the client on the Henderson project is already riding my back. If you aren't here by Monday with the revised prints, I gotta put someone else on it. I lost the prints in the fire, Mike. Silence. Figure it out, Gabe. I'm sorry. I hung up. No job. No house. No family. I spent the morning sitting in the public library, the only place that didn't kick you out for loitering if you pretended to read. I pulled a book on architectural history off the shelf and stared at the pages without seeing them. My stomach rumbled. I had skipped the shelter breakfast because the line was too long. Around noon, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I flinched, expecting a security guard. Easy, soldier. I looked up. Standing there, leaning heavily on a cane with a silver eagle head, was Grandpa Elijah. He was wearing his Sunday suit, though it was a Wednesday, and a fedora that had seen better decades. He looked frail, his skin like parchment paper stretched over bone, but his blue eyes were sharp as tack. Grandpa! I stood up, nearly knocking over my chair. How did you find me? Nathan called me, he said, his voice raspy. Nathan was my best friend, a mechanic who ran a shop on the east side. I had texted him last night before my phone died. He said you were in a bad way, said your dad. Well, he told me what Robert said. Grandpa's jaw tightened when he mentioned my father's name. I'm fine, Grandpa. You shouldn't be here. Did you escape the nursing home again? It's an assisted living facility, Gabriel. And I'm a grown man, not a prisoner. I took a cab. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my ash-stained shirt. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with fury. Not at me, but for me. Sit down, he commanded. We sat. He pulled a brown paper bag from his pocket. It's a ham sandwich. Made it myself. Stole the ham from the cafeteria. They serve sludge in there. I took the sandwich. I wanted to cry, but I just ate it. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. They left you, Grandpa said. It wasn't a question. They were eating crab legs, I said, wiping my mouth. Caleb got a Lamborghini, green, like a giant booger. Grandpa chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. That boy has a 10-cent head and $1 million ego. Your father created a monster. I have nothing, Grandpa. Insurance is going to take months. I don't even have a change of underwear. Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket again. He pulled out a small, worn leather wallet. He opened it. It was almost empty, but he pulled out a $20 bill and a folded piece of pink paper. I don't have much cash, Gabe. Your father has power of attorney over my accounts. Says he's protecting my assets for my care. Protecting them for his boat payments is more like it. Grandpa spat the words out. But I have this. He slid the pink paper across the table. It was a lottery ticket. Powerball. I looked at it, then at him. Grandpa. Take it, he insisted. I buy one every week. I sneak out to the corner store. This one, I played your birthday, and Nathan's birthday, and the day your grandma passed. Good numbers. Strong numbers. Grandpa, the odds are 1 in 300 million. I need a job, not a gamble. Take the damn ticket, Gabriel. He slammed his cane on the floor. The librarian shushed us. He glared at her until she looked away. It's hope. Sometimes hope is the only currency that matters. I took the ticket and shoved it into my pocket. Thanks, Grandpa. Now, he said, struggling to stand up. Let's go to your parents' house. No, absolutely not. They made it clear. I need my other glasses, Grandpa lied. I knew he had his glasses on his face. And you need your birth certificate, and maybe to look them in the eye. A man doesn't hide, Gabriel, even when he's beaten. We took a bus to the wealthy side of town. Took an hour. Walking up the long, paved driveway to my parents' estate felt like walking to the gallows. The Lamborghini was parked right in front, aggressive and loud even when it was stationary. Next to it was the boat on a trailer, a massive white cruiser named the Linda Marie. We rang the bell. Mom answered. She was wearing tennis whites, though I had never seen her hold a racket. Dad. She looked at Grandpa, then at me. Her nose wrinkled. Gabriel. I told you we can't. I'm here for my things, Linda. Grandpa cut her off. And Gabriel is here to get his papers, so he can rebuild the life you all ignored. We didn't ignore it, she sniffed, stepping aside reluctantly. We just had plans. Life goes on, Gabriel. You can't expect the world to stop because you had an accident. An accident. Not a tragedy. An accident. We walked into the foyer. It smelled of lilies and expensive polish. Caleb walked in from the patio, holding a protein shake. He saw me and smirked. Hey, fireman. Heard you had a hot night. He laughed at his own joke. Did you manage to save anything? Or just that ugly jacket? My fists clenched at my sides. Nice car, Caleb. Yeah, she's a beast. 630 horsepower. Dad's helping with the insurance, but I'm handling the rest. Big things coming. Where is Dad? I asked. Golfing, Mom said. With the bank manager. Refinancing the boat loan. Interest rates are killer right now. I looked around the house. The marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the massive portrait of the four of us from 10 years ago where I was shoved to the back. It was all a facade. Refinancing boat loans? They were leveraging everything to look rich. Grandpa, let's get your glasses, I said. We went to the guest room Grandpa used when he visited. He didn't get glasses. He opened a small safe in the closet. One he kept hidden under a loose floorboard. He pulled out a thick envelope. My old war bonds, he whispered. Your father doesn't know about these. It's not much, maybe a few thousand. Take it. No, I said firmly. That's your emergency fund. You are my emergency, Gabriel. You are the only good thing that came out of this bloodline. I hugged him. He smelled of Old Spice and peppermint. I'll figure it out, Grandpa. Keep the bonds. I have the ticket, remember? He smiled weakly. The ticket. Right. We walked out. As we passed the living room, Mom called out. Gabriel, try not to come back until you've showered. We have the neighbors coming for cocktails on Friday. Don't worry, Mom, I said, stopping at the door. I looked at Caleb, who was polishing a smudge on his Lamborghini with his sleeve. I won't be back. I walked Grandpa to the cab I called for him with Nathan's Uber account. Then I walked back to the bus stop. That night, back at the shelter, I lay on the cot. I pulled out the pink slip of paper. The drawing was tonight. I pulled up the numbers on my phone, watching the battery tick down to 2%. 04, 12, 19, 28, 45. Powerball, 07. My birthday. Nathan's birthday. Grandma's death day. I looked at the screen. I looked at the ticket. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes with dirty knuckles. I looked again. The numbers matched. Every single one. I didn't scream. I didn't jump up. I felt all the air leave the room. The guy next to me coughed. A siren wailed outside. $50 million. I folded the ticket carefully, my hands trembling so hard I almost dropped it. I put it inside my sock, then inside my boot. I put the boot on and tied it tight. I didn't sleep a wink. I lay there, staring at the ceiling pipes, and for the first time in 24 hours, I didn't feel cold. I felt dangerous. Winning the lottery isn't like the commercials. There's no confetti cannon. There's just paranoia. Pure, unadulterated paranoia. I walked out of the shelter at 5 a.m., clutching my left boot like it contained a nuclear launch code. I walked 5 miles to Nathan's auto shop. He found me sitting against the roll-up door when he arrived at 7:30. Gabe! He dropped his coffee. Man, you look like hell. I was coming to get you later. Why didn't you wait? Open the door, Nate. Lock it behind us. He saw the look in my eyes, wild, sleep-deprived, intense. He opened the shop, pulled me inside, and locked the deadbolt. We went into his small, grease-stained office. What's going on? Did you kill someone? Is it Caleb? I took off my boot. I pulled out the ticket. I smoothed it out on his desk, right next to a pile of unpaid invoices and a greasy carburetor part. Check the numbers, I whispered. Yesterday's Powerball. Nathan looked at me, confused. He pulled up the results on his computer. He looked at the ticket. He looked at the screen. He looked at the ticket again. Holy! He stood up, knocking his chair over. Gabe, is this real? Did you buy this? Grandpa gave it to me. Yesterday. 50 million? Nathan's voice went high. That's, after taxes, lump sum. That's like $25–30 million cash. Yeah. We gotta call your dad. No, wait, screw your dad. We gotta call a lawyer. No. I slammed my hand on the desk. No one knows. Not Dad. Not Mom. Especially not Caleb. If they find out, they'll sue me. They'll guilt me. They'll say Grandpa had dementia and I stole the ticket. Dad has power of attorney over Grandpa. Remember? Nathan stopped celebrating. He nodded slowly. You're right. Robert would bleed you dry. He's been dodging the IRS for years, Gabe. If he smells cash, he's a shark. I need a lawyer, Nate. A real one. Not a family friend. A shark of my own. We spent the next week moving in silence. I claimed the prize through a blind trust. I named it the Phoenix Trust. Fitting, right? I hired Mr. Carter, a terrifyingly efficient wealth management attorney who wore suits that cost more than my burned-down house. When the money hit the account, $28.5 million after Uncle Sam took his cut, I didn't buy a yacht. I bought a prepaid burner phone. I called Grandpa. Grandpa, I said, you sitting down? Who is this? It's Gabriel. Grandpa, the ticket. It hit. Silence on the line. Then, a low chuckle that turned into a full belly laugh. I told you those were strong numbers. Grandma is looking out for you, boy. Grandpa, listen. No one can know. I'm gonna get you out of that home. But we have to be smart. I'm playing the long game. I can keep a secret, Grandpa said. I kept your father's secrets for 40 years. I can keep a good one for a change. 2 days later, the fire marshal's report came back. I was staying at a Motel 6, paying cash, waiting for the trust to clear a rental house. I met the investigator at the site of my burned home. It was just a black scar on the earth now. Mr. Davison, the investigator said, flipping through his clipboard. We found the point of origin. Garage. Trash can next to the paint thinner. I don't smoke, I said, and I don't keep flammable rags there. We found remains of a high-end cigar. Cuban. Distinctive gold band. Partial print on the wrapper that didn't burn. My blood ran cold. Caleb smoked Cubans. He bought them illegally online and bragged about them constantly. He had been at my house that afternoon, banging on the door while I was at work, leaving a voicemail about borrowing my drill. Can I see the report? I asked. I stared at the photo of the charred cigar nub. It was Caleb. He had been snooping around, probably lit up, tossed the butt in the trash can in the garage, and drove off in his flashy car while my life caught fire. I drove to my parents' house. I didn't take the bus this time. I rented a Ford Focus. I parked down the street. I walked in. They were eating dinner. Caleb was there, scrolling on his phone. You again. Dad sighed. Gabriel, we told you. We can't give you money. We're tight right now. I don't want money, I said, my voice deadly calm. I want to know who was at my house on Tuesday afternoon. Caleb didn't look up. Nobody. Why? The fire marshal found a cigar butt, a Cuban, in my garage. The room went silent. Caleb froze. Mom put down her fork. Dad looked at Caleb. Don't be ridiculous, Mom snapped. Caleb hasn't smoked in months. He's on a health kick. I saw him smoke one on Instagram last week, I said. Caleb, you were there. You burned my house down. Prove it, Caleb sneered. It's your word against mine. And who are the cops going to believe? The homeless guy or the businessman? He's right, Gabriel, Dad said, wiping his mouth. Accidents happen. Why are you trying to destroy your brother? Isn't it enough that you're a failure? Do you have to drag him down too? I looked at them, really looked at them. They knew. They absolutely knew he did it. and they didn't care. Okay, I said. I just wanted to see if you had a conscience. Get out, Dad pointed to the door. And don't come back until you apologize to your brother. I'm leaving, I said. But Dad, remember this moment. Remember that you chose the arsonist over the son who built his own life. Go, he shouted. I walked out. I got into my rental car. I called Mr. Carter, my lawyer. Carter, I said, start the process. I want to buy the land on the hill, the one overlooking the valley, and find out who holds the mortgage on my parents' boat and house. You want to help them? Carter asked. No, I smiled, looking at the setting sun. I want to own them. The storm was just beginning, and I was the hurricane. 1 year, 365 days. That's how long I went dark. To my family, I was a ghost. I changed my number. I deleted my old social media. As far as they knew, I was drifting between shelters or working manual labor in another state. They didn't look for me. Not once. No missing persons report. No calls to Nathan. I was simply erased from the narrative of the Davison family. But in the shadows, I was building. I bought 10 acres of land on the highest peak of Blackwood Ridge, directly overlooking the valley where my parents' subdivision lay. I hired the best contractors in the state. Not my old boss Mike, but a high-end firm from Chicago. I designed the house myself. It was my masterpiece. A modern fortress of glass, steel, and stone. Solar-powered, smart integrated, impenetrable. I moved Grandpa Elijah in 3 months ago. I hired a private medical transport to pick him up from the facility. When Dad found out Grandpa was missing, he panicked. Not because he missed his father, but because Grandpa's pension check stopped getting deposited into the joint account Dad controlled. I had Carter handle it. A simple legal notice. Elijah Davison is under the care of a private guardian. Cease and desist all contact or face an audit regarding the misappropriation of his funds for the last 5 years. Dad went silent real quick after that threat. Grandpa loved the new house. He had a suite on the first floor with a view of the mountains. He had a private chef who made him soups that didn't taste like sludge. He gained 10 pounds and his color returned. You're spoiling me, Gabe, he'd say, watching the sunset from the heated patio. I'm just paying back the sandwich, I'd reply. Meanwhile, I watched my family from afar. It wasn't hard. They lived their lives online. Caleb's business collapsed, as predicted. The vape shop closed. Then he tried a crypto scheme that failed. But the spending didn't stop. They were bleeding money. I knew this because I had bought their debt. Through a shell company, I purchased the distressed note on Dad's boat, the Linda Marie. Then I bought the lien on the Lamborghini. They were 3 months behind on payments. They were juggling credit cards to keep up appearances at the country club. Then came the funeral. Great Aunt Martha passed away. She was the one relative besides Grandpa who had been kind to me. I knew the whole family would be there. I decided to make an appearance. Not as the millionaire, but as the son they expected. I wore a plain black suit, off the rack, slightly ill-fitting. I drove Nathan's battered Ford pickup truck. I parked in the back of the church lot. When I walked into the sanctuary, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the pews. I saw Mom clutch her pearls. Dad glared at me. Caleb, who was wearing a flashy Italian suit, scoffed audibly. I walked toward the front row where the family sat. You can't sit here, Caleb hissed as I approached. This is for immediate family. I am immediate family, Caleb. She was my aunt. You look like a mechanic, Mom whispered harshly, not making eye contact. Go sit in the back. Don't embarrass us. The mayor is here. Grandpa is here, I said, pointing to where Grandpa Elijah sat in his wheelchair, looking dignified. I had brought him separately in the transport van, but sat him with them to see their reaction. Dad is senile, Caleb said. He doesn't know you. Go to the back, Gabriel. Seriously, you smell like poverty. I looked at Grandpa. He winked at me imperceptibly. He knew the game. Fine, I said. I'll sit in the back. I walked to the very last pew. I sat alone. I watched them preen and pose, accepting condolences they didn't mean. I watched Dad shake hands with the bank manager, laughing too loud, trying to secure another extension on a loan I knew he wouldn't get. After the service, I walked out to the parking lot. Caleb was leaning against his Lamborghini, which I knew was 2 days away from repossession, smoking a cigar. Still driving that junk heap? Caleb laughed, kicking the tire of Nathan's truck. Man, you really are a loser. You know, Dad was saying we should probably write you out of the will officially, just to be safe. Safe from what? I asked, unlocking the truck door. Safe from you leeching off our success. We're building an empire, Gabe. You're just debris. Empire, I repeated. Right? How's the vape shop? Caleb's face turned red. I'm pivoting. I have investors lined up for a tech startup. Big money. You wouldn't understand. Good luck with that, Caleb. I drove away. As I turned the corner, I pulled over. A sleek, black Ferrari SF90 Straightale pulled up behind me. My driver, a massive guy named Tony, hopped out. Ready to switch, boss? Yeah, I said. I handed the truck keys to one of my staff to return to Nathan. I slid into the driver's seat of the Ferrari. The leather smelled like victory. The engine roared to life. A deep, guttural growl that shook the pavement. I drove back to my mansion on the hill. I walked into my office, where a wall of monitors displayed the financial ruin of the Davison family. Mr. Davison, Carter said over the speakerphone, the grace period on the boat loan ends tomorrow, and the IRS has finalized the audit on your father's business. They're moving to seize assets on Friday. Friday? I said, spinning a pen in my fingers. That's 2 days away. Yes, and there's one more thing. Architectural Digest wants to run the feature on your home this weekend. They want to put you on the cover. The Mystery Millionaire of Blackwood Ridge. Run it, I said. Put my face on every newsstand in the city. It will blow your cover, Gabriel. That's the point, Carter. The storm has been gathering for a year. It's time for the lightning to strike. I hung up. I looked down at the valley. I could see the tiny lights of my parents' house. They were probably drinking wine, toasting to their imaginary empire, oblivious to the fact that the check was about to come due. And the waiter was me. Friday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I was in my home gym, finishing a 5K run on the treadmill, overlooking the sunrise. My phone, the real one now, sat on the console. It was quiet. Down in the valley, chaos was erupting. I knew this because Nathan was texting me play-by-play updates. He was parked down the street from my parents' house, pretending to fix a neighbor's car. Nathan, 8:15 a.m. Repo truck just pulled up. Big one. They're hooking up the boat. Nathan, 8:25 a.m. Your dad is outside in his bathrobe screaming. Police just arrived. Looks like a civil standby. Nathan, 8:45 a.m. Boat is gone. Bye-bye Linda Marie. Wait. Another truck. Flatbed. They're going for the Lumbo. I took a sip of water. The Lamborghini. Caleb's pride and joy. The symbol of everything he hadn't earned. Nathan, 9 a.m. Caleb tried to block the driveway. Cops threatened to cuff him. He's crying, Gabe. Actually crying. I felt a twinge of satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. The financial ruin was just step one. Step two was the revelation. At 10 a.m., the digital edition of Architectural Digest went live. The cover was a stunning high-resolution shot of me, standing on the cantilevered balcony of my mansion, wearing a bespoke suit, looking powerful and calm. The headline, From Ashes to Empire. How Gabriel Davison Turned Homelessness into a $50 Million Masterpiece. The article detailed everything, the lottery win, without mentioning the specific amount, just multimillions. The investment in sustainable housing, the rapid rise of my own firm. It painted me as a prodigy who overcame family estrangement and tragedy. I waited. 10:15 a.m. Nothing. 10:30 a.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 10:32 a.m. Caleb sent a friend request on Facebook, then Instagram, then LinkedIn. 10:35 a.m. The avalanche began. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Dad, 3 missed calls. Mom, 5 missed calls. Caleb, 12 missed calls. Then the texts. Caleb, bro, just saw the article. OMG, I knew you were working on something big. Why didn't you tell us? I'm so proud of you. Caleb, call me back. Crazy morning here. Just a mix-up with the bank, but we should celebrate. Dinner on me? Well, on you, haha. Caleb posted a photo on Facebook. It was the one from 10 years ago. Us at a beach trip. He had cropped himself to look closer to me. Caption: always loved my bro, through thick and thin. Blood is thicker than water. Hashtag family, hashtag millionaires. I stared at the screen, disgusted. Always loved my bro. The same bro he called debris 3 days ago. Then came Mom. Mom, Gabriel, honey, pick up. It's an emergency. The IRS made a mistake. They took the boat. They're freezing Daddy's accounts. We don't have access to cash. Mom, we know about the article. We are so happy for you. We always knew you were special. That's why we were so hard on you, to push you to greatness. Mom, please, Gabriel. They are threatening to take the house next week. We are family. You can't let this happen. Dad, son, we need to talk. Man to man. There are things you don't understand about business. I need a bridge loan. Just $500K. I can pay you back next month. Dad, we need you. Answer immediately. I let them simmer for an hour. I took a shower. I ate a leisurely breakfast with Grandpa Elijah. They're calling, I told Grandpa. He nodded, slicing his pancakes. The rats swim to the highest ground when the ship sinks. They want to come over. Let them, Grandpa said, his eyes hard. Let them see what they threw away. I sent one text to the group chat I had been excluded from for years but was suddenly added back to. Me, come to the gate. 12 p.m. I attached a GPS pin to my location. At 11:55 a.m., I watched on the security monitors. The rusted sedan, the only car they had left after the morning's repo purge, struggled up the steep, winding driveway to my estate. It looked like a beetle crawling up a mountain. They stopped at the main gate. It was 12 feet high, solid steel with cameras everywhere. I walked out of the front door. I didn't walk to the gate. I stood on the upper terrace, looking down at them. I pressed a button on my phone, and my voice projected through the intercom system at the gate. State your business. Dad rolled down the window. He looked 10 years older than he had at the funeral. His face was gray, unshaven. Mom was wearing sunglasses, likely hiding swollen eyes. Caleb was in the back seat, looking nervous. Gabriel, Dad shouted up at the camera. Open the gate. It's us. It's Mom and Dad. I see that, I said. Why are you here? We wanted to congratulate you. Mom yelled, her voice cracking. And we need to talk. We're in trouble, Gabriel. Serious trouble. We're family, Caleb shouted. Come on, bro. Let us in. It's hot out here. I signaled to Tony, my security head. Let them in. But only to the courtyard. The gates swung open slowly. The rusted sedan drove in, looking pitiful against the pristine paved stones of my driveway. They parked next to my Ferrari. The contrast was poetic. They climbed out of the car. They looked around wide-eyed, taking in the fountain, the manicured gardens, the sheer scale of the wealth I had built. I walked down the stairs to meet them. I didn't smile. I didn't offer a hand. I stood there, hands in my pockets, with Grandpa Elijah rolling up beside me in his electric wheelchair. Gabriel. Mom rushed forward, arms open. Oh, look at you. You look expensive. She tried to hug me. I stepped back. She hugged the air, stumbling slightly. Cut the act, Mom, I said. Act. Dad stepped up, trying to regain some authority. Now see here, son. We're happy for you. But you can't treat your mother like that. We're here because we need help. The IRS. It's a misunderstanding, but they froze everything. We need a float. Just until the lawyers sort it out. How much? I asked. Caleb piped up. Like, 2 million? To clear the debts and get the cars back? And maybe invest in my startup? I have a great idea for 2 million, I repeated. That's a lot of money. It's nothing to you now, Caleb said, eyeing the Ferrari. You won 50 mil. You're set for life. Don't be greedy, Gabe. Greedy? I laughed. It was a cold sound. You know, I remember a specific conversation about money. About a year ago. That's in the past. Dad waved his hand dismissively. Water under the bridge. Is it? I pulled out my phone. Grandpa, do you want to do the honors? Grandpa smiled. He pressed a button on a remote he was holding. Suddenly, speakers hidden in the landscape rocks crackled to life. My voice, from a year ago, echoed through the courtyard. Dad, the house. It's gone. I don't have anywhere to go. Can I crash on the couch tonight? Dad's face went pale. Mom gasped. Then Dad's voice boomed out, loud and clear. We're at the Golden Crab Buffet celebrating. If you come over smelling like smoke and ruin, you're gonna kill the vibe. And then the kicker. We can't host you right now. We're at a buffet with your brother. Get a hotel. The recording ended. The silence in the courtyard was absolute. A bird chirped somewhere, oblivious to the slaughter. Dad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Caleb looked at his shoes. Mom was trembling. You recorded that? Dad whispered. You trapped me? I didn't trap you, I said. I just hit save, because I knew one day you'd come crawling back. Not for me, but for this. I gestured to the mansion. Gabriel, please. Mom sobbed. Real tears this time. We were wrong. We were selfish. But we're destitute. They're going to take the house on Tuesday. We'll be homeless. Homeless. I mused. That's a scary word. I know it well. I slept in a shelter with a guy named Detroit who coughed blood all night. Because my family was eating crab legs. We're sorry, Caleb yelled. Okay? We're sorry. Is that what you want to hear? Now cut the check. I looked at Caleb. You still don't get it. There is no check. There is no bailout. You can't do this, Dad shouted, his face turning purple. I am your father. I gave you life. And you tried to starve it out of me, I countered. You chose your side. You chose the boat. You chose the Lamborghini. You chose the buffet. I turned to Tony. Escort them off the property. Wait. Mom lunged for Grandpa's hand. Dad. Elijah. Talk to him. Tell him. Family helps family. Grandpa pulled his hand away as if she were made of fire. I have my family, Grandpa said, putting a hand on my arm. And Gabriel is right. You didn't just burn a bridge, Linda. You nuked the island. Get out, I said. Where are we supposed to go? Dad pleaded, the arrogance finally gone, replaced by pure terror. We have nowhere. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a single $20 bill. The same amount I had the night of the fire. I tucked it into Dad's shirt pocket. There's a Motel 6 on the highway, I said, repeating his words. Figure it out. Don't be dramatic. I turned my back on them. Gabriel. Gabriel. They were screaming my name as Tony herded them back into their rusted car. I walked into the house, Grandpa beside me. The heavy front doors clicked shut, locking out the noise, locking out the past. We went to the kitchen. The chef had prepared lunch. Crab legs, Grandpa asked with a mischievous grin. Crab legs, I agreed. We sat down to eat. And for the first time in my life, the food tasted like freedom. The silence after they left was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that comes after a violent thunderstorm. The air feels charged, scrubbed clean. We ate the crab legs. It felt symbolic, a ritualistic reclaiming of the thing they had used to mock me. Grandpa struggled a bit with the crackers, so I helped him, extracting the sweet meat from the shell. You know, Grandpa said, dipping a piece in butter. Your father, he looked small. I always remembered him as this looming giant. But out there, next to you, he looked like a child. He is a child, I said. A child who never learned that actions have consequences. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Nathan. Nathan. Dude. Police scanner says a domestic dispute at the Motel 6. Pretty sure it's your dad and Caleb fighting in the parking lot. I showed the text to Grandpa. He shook his head. They'll eat each other alive now. Without a common enemy or a common bank account, they'll turn on themselves. Do you think I was too hard on them? I asked. It was the one question lingering in the back of my mind. The good son programming was hard to break. Grandpa put down his fork. He looked me dead in the eye. Gabriel, if you had given them money today, they would have hated you for it. They would have resented needing you. And 6 months from now, they'd be back for more. And they'd hate you even more then. You didn't punish them. You freed yourself. He was right. The next few weeks were a blur of legalities. Dad and Mom lost the house. It was foreclosed. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town. Caleb's girlfriend, the one he was trying to impress with the tech startup lies, dumped him publicly on TikTok. I watched it all from the hill. Not with joy exactly, but with a sense of balance being restored. Karma isn't instantaneous, but when it hits hard. One afternoon, I was in my office reviewing blueprints for a new affordable housing complex I was funding. My way of giving back to the shelter that took me in. My assistant buzzed in. Gabriel, there's a delivery for you. At the gate. It's not a package. It's a person. I frowned. Who? She says her name is Sarah. She says she knows about the fire. My heart skipped a beat. Sarah was Caleb's ex-girlfriend. The one who was with him during his high roller phase. Let her in. Sarah drove up in a modest Honda. She looked tired. She walked into my office, clutching a purse nervously. Gabriel, she said, I saw the article. I didn't come for money. Everyone comes for money, Sarah. What do you want? She pulled a cell phone out of her purse. I broke up with Caleb months ago, but I kept this. I was scared to show anyone because your dad threatened to sue me if I ever spoke about the family business. But now, she slid the phone across the desk. It was a video. I pressed play. It was shaky footage, clearly taken from a car window. It showed my old house, my garage. It showed Caleb, laughing, tossing a lit cigar into the open trash bin. Kobe, Caleb yelled in the video as the cigar landed. Then he jumped into his car. Let's go, babe. This place is a dump anyway. The video ended. I looked up at Sarah. Why are you giving me this? Because he blamed me, she whispered. He told people I started it. I just want my name clear. And I thought you should have the nail for the coffin. I took the phone. This was it. The proof. The undeniable evidence that it wasn't an accident. It was negligence bordering on arson. Thank you, Sarah. I said. You just finished the story. I sent the video to the fire marshal and the insurance company. 3 days later, Caleb was arrested. Insurance fraud and reckless endangerment. Since the claim had been paid out to Dad, who owned the house I was renting to own, and they lied about the cause, it was a felony. I didn't go to the arraignment. I didn't visit him in jail. I stood on my balcony that evening, looking out at the city lights. I held a glass of wine. Grandpa rolled out to join me. It's over, I said. It's never over, Gabe, Grandpa said softly. But the war is done. Now comes the peace. And peace is harder to handle than war sometimes. You have to fill the quiet with something good. I looked at the empty chairs beside us. I thought about Nathan, who was coming over later for pizza. I thought about Sarah, who I had hired as a receptionist for my new firm because she needed a fresh start too. I thought about the families who would live in the housing complex I was building. I'll fill it, I promised. I'll fill it with people who show up. This was the moment that changed everything, when I finally stopped begging for a seat at a table where I was never welcome, and built my own table instead. Thank you for listening to my story. You guys are the real ones. If you've ever had to cut toxic family out of your life to save yourself, do me a favor, Smash that like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know I'm not alone. Your support helps more people find this story and realize that blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. See you in the next one. The fallout of a nuclear explosion isn't just the blast. It's the radiation that poisons the soil for years. That's what it felt like watching my family disintegrate in the wake of Caleb's arrest. The speed of their collapse was terrifying, a testament to how fragile their empire really was. It was built on debt, lies, and the assumption that consequences were things that happened to other people, poor people, people like me. Caleb's bail was set at $500,000. It was a high number, driven by the flight risk associated with his previous threats to leave the country and the severity of the insurance fraud charges. For a family that had been fighting over the last crab leg at a buffet just weeks earlier, it might as well have been $50 million. My phone rang 2 days after the arrest. It was a blocked number, but I knew who it was. I had unblocked Dad for exactly one reason. I wanted to hear the desperation. Call it petty, call it cruel, but after 30 years of being the punching bag, I wanted to hear the sound of the fist breaking. Gabriel. Dad's voice was a husk of its former booming self. It sounded like he had been swallowing broken glass. We need to talk about your brother. I don't have a brother, I said, leaning back in my office chair, watching the sun hit the solar panels of the new community center I was designing. I have an arsonist who shares my last name. He's going to prison, Gabriel, Dad shouted, the old anger flaring up before quickly dying out into a sob. State prison. You know what happens to boys like Caleb in there? He's soft. He won't survive a week. Then maybe you should have taught him how to be tough instead of how to be entitled, I replied calmly. Maybe if he had worked a day in his life, he'd have some grit. We are selling everything. Mom's voice chimed in from the background, shrill and panicked. We are selling my jewelry. We are cashing out the 401k penalties. We are scraping every penny to pay for his defense lawyer. We are going to be destitute, Gabriel. Does that make you happy? Seeing your parents on the street. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. You were fine with me being on the street, Mom. Remember? You told me to get a hotel when I had $20 to my name. You are only destitute because you're spending money you don't have to save a criminal. That's a choice. I didn't have a choice when my house burned down. Just drop the charges, Dad begged. Tell the DA it was a mistake. Tell them you gave him permission to smoke there. Please, we will sign anything. We will sign away our rights to the estate. We will disappear. You already disappeared, Dad, I said. You disappeared the night of the fire. The DA is prosecuting based on evidence provided by Sarah and the insurance investigators. It's out of my hands. It's in the hands of the law now. I hung up. The trial, or rather the pretrial hearings, were a circus. I didn't attend, but Nathan went. He sat in the back row, reporting back like a war correspondent. It's bad, Gabe. Nathan told me over beers on my patio one evening. Your dad looks like a skeleton. He's wearing a suit that's 2 sizes too big because he's lost so much weight. And Caleb, man, Caleb is a mess. He cried when the judge denied the motion to dismiss. Actually wailed. I didn't mean to. Like a toddler who spilled milk. Caleb eventually took a plea deal. Facing 10 years for arson and fraud, he pled guilty to reckless endangerment and insurance fraud in exchange for a 4-year sentence, with eligibility for parole in 2 years. It didn't seem like enough for burning down a man's life, but it was enough to shatter theirs. To pay for the high-powered attorney who negotiated that deal, Mom and Dad sold the last thing they had, their image. They liquidated the furniture, the designer clothes, even the family silver. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex known for thin walls and sirens at night. I drove by it once. It was a gray, boxy building next to a highway overpass. I saw Dad walking to the dumpster, carrying a bag of trash. He was wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. He looked defeated. He looked exactly like I had felt sitting on that curb. The universe has a dark sense of humor. But the twist came from a place I didn't expect. About 3 months after Caleb went inside, Nathan called me. He sounded weird. Gabe, are you near a computer? Yeah, why? Go to eBay. Search for Vintage Baseball Collection, 1998. I frowned but typed it in. A listing popped up. It was a collection of signed baseballs and cards. My collection. The one I had left in my childhood bedroom when I moved out. The one Mom said she had probably thrown away years ago when she turned my room into a yoga studio. That's my stuff, I whispered. That's the ball Grandpa caught at the Cubs game. Look at the seller, Nathan said. The seller username was luxlife_Linda. Mom. She was selling my childhood memories to pay for Caleb's commissary fund. I clicked on See Other Items. It was a yard sale of my past. My high school diploma frame. The trophy I won for the science fair. Even an old watch Grandpa had given me for my 18th birthday that I thought I had lost. She had kept it all. Not out of sentiment, but because she was a hoarder of value. She kept it just in case she could monetize it one day. And that day had come. I felt a surge of nausea. It wasn't about the objects. It was about the violation. She was stripping the last remnants of my existence in that house to feed the parasite that was my brother. I'm going to report it, I said, my finger hovering over the mouse. Stolen property. No, Nathan said. Don't give them the satisfaction of a fight. They want you to engage. They want you to sue them so they can see you in court and beg. So what do I do? Let her sell Grandpa's watch to a stranger. No, Nathan said. We buy it. All of it. I'm not giving her my money, Nate. She won't know it's you. I'll set up a buyer account. We'll buy it all back. You get your history back and they get… What? A few $100 to waste on ramen noodles for Caleb? It's pathetic money, Gabe. Let them have the crumbs. So we did. I sat there for 3 hours watching Nathan bid on my own life. We bought the baseballs, the trophy, the watch. We bought the old photo albums she had listed as vintage family photos, frames included. When the boxes arrived at Nathan's shop a week later, I opened them with trembling hands. It smelled like their house, that cloying lily perfume and stale air. I pulled out the photo album. It was the one from the listing. I flipped through it. It was mostly pictures of Caleb. Caleb at prom. Caleb at graduation. Caleb with his first car. But tucked in the very back, almost hidden, was a single photo of me. I was 6 years old, sitting on the floor, building a tower out of wooden blocks. Grandpa Elijah was sitting next to me, helping me stack them. I stared at that photo. I realized something profound. Even back then, it was just me and Grandpa building things while the rest of them were out of frame. I took the photo out. I threw the rest of the album in the trash. Burn it, I told Nathan. The whole album? The whole box. Except the watch and the ball. Burn the rest. I don't want their dust in my life. We lit a fire in an oil drum behind the shop. I watched the vintage family photos curl and blacken. It was cathartic. It was the final funeral for the boy who desperately wanted to be in the album. Meanwhile, my life was blooming. The Phoenix Community Project broke ground. It wasn't just a shelter. It was a transition center. Tiny homes, job training workshops, and mental health support. I used the settlement money from Caleb's insurance fraud, which the court ordered him to pay, essentially indebting him for life, to fund the garden. I named the garden the Elijah Garden. Speaking of Grandpa, he was thriving, but time is a thief that no amount of money can bribe. He was 84. His heart was strong, but his body was tired. One evening, about 6 months after the auction incident, Grandpa called me into his room. He was sitting in his leather armchair, looking out at the valley. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent purples and oranges. "Gabriel," he said softly, "sit." I sat on the ottoman at his feet. "What's wrong, Grandpa? Do you need the doctor?" "No doctors." He waved his hand. "I need a driver. A driver. I want to go for a ride. In the black car. The Ferrari." I smiled. "Grandpa, it's fast. It's loud. Are you sure?" "I'm dying, Gabriel, not dead. I want to feel some horsepower before I go upstairs." I didn't argue. I helped him into the passenger seat of the SF-90 Straydale. He looked small in the bucket seat, but his grin was wide. "Where to?" I asked, firing up the engine. The roar echoed off the garage walls. "Just drive," he said. "Fast." I took him to the highway. I opened it up. The world blurred outside the windows. The engine screamed a beautiful, mechanical symphony. I looked over at Grandpa. He had his window cracked open slightly, the wind ruffling his thin white hair. He had his eyes closed, a look of pure, unadulterated bliss on his face. For 20 minutes, we weren't a billionaire and his sick grandfather. We were two outlaws outrunning the sunset. When we got back, he was exhausted. I had to carry him from the car to his bed. He felt lighter than before. "That was good," he whispered as I tucked the quilt around him. "That was living." "We can go again tomorrow," I promised. He looked at me, his blue eyes cloudy but kind. "Don't make promises to old men, Gabriel. Just make plans for yourself. I plan to keep you around for a long time." He reached out and squeezed my hand. His grip was weak. "You did it, boy. You built the castle. But remember, a castle with a drawbridge that's always up is just a prison. You have to let people in. I let you in. I let Nathan in. I let Sarah in." "Good start," he murmured, his eyes closing. "Good start." That night, I stayed in the chair next to his bed. I didn't sleep. I watched his chest rise and fall, terrified that each breath would be the last. Grandpa Elijah didn't die that night. He gave me 3 more months. 3 months of stories, of watching old westerns, of eating ice cream for breakfast because cholesterol can't catch me now. But the decline was steady. And as Grandpa faded, the silence from the apartment by the highway grew louder. I heard through the grapevine. Sarah still had friends who knew Caleb's old circle, that Mom had started cleaning houses. Linda Davison, the woman who used to fire maids for leaving a streak on the mirror, was now scrubbing toilets for the women she used to play tennis with. Dad had taken a job as a night security guard at a warehouse. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was guarding boxes, just like the security guard who had kicked me off the bench the night of the fire. They never called again after the auction. Shame is a powerful silencer, or maybe they just ran out of things to sell. I thought about visiting them. I thought about driving the Ferrari to their apartment complex and handing them an envelope of cash, just to see the look on their faces. To be the bigger man. But then I looked at Grandpa, frail and fading, the man they had abandoned in a nursing home to rot while they bought boats. And I realized that being the bigger man doesn't mean fixing the messes of the people who tried to destroy you. Being the bigger man means protecting the peace you built from the ashes. So I stayed on the hill. I stayed with the man who came when no one else did. The end came on a Tuesday. It always seems to be a Tuesday. The fire was a Tuesday. The lottery was a Tuesday. And Grandpa Elijah left this world on a rainy Tuesday morning in November. He passed in his sleep. No pain, no drama. Just a quiet exit for a man who had lived loudly in the corners of a quiet life. When I walked into his room with his morning coffee, he was gone. He looked peaceful, his hands folded over his chest, that old leather wallet sitting on the nightstand next to him. I didn't cry immediately. I went into autopilot. I called the doctor. I called the funeral home. I called Nathan. It wasn't until the coroner's van pulled away, taking the only father figure I had ever really known, that I collapsed. I sat on the floor of his empty room, smelling the faint scent of Old Spice and peppermint, and I wept. I wept for the boy who was ignored. I wept for the man who was lonely. And I wept with gratitude that I had been able to give him this final year of dignity. The funeral was complicated. I had legal control over Grandpa's arrangements, per the documents we signed when I moved him in. I planned a service worthy of him. A military honor guard for his service in Korea. A beautiful reception at the estate. I debated whether to tell them, my biological donors. In the end, I decided Grandpa would have wanted them to know, if only to deny them the satisfaction of claiming ignorance. I had Carter send a formal notification of death and the time of the service. No invitation to the wake, just the church service. They showed up. Of course they did. Funerals are prime theater for narcissists. I stood by the casket, greeting the few genuine friends Grandpa had left. Old veterans, guys from the lodge, Nathan, Sarah, and my staff. Then the doors opened and the Davison trio, minus the incarcerated Caleb, walked in. Dad looked like a ghost. His suit was threadbare and hung loosely on his frame. Mom was wearing a black dress that I recognized from 5 years ago, but it looked worn, the hem slightly frayed. They looked small. They looked gray. They walked up to the casket. I stepped aside, giving them space. Not for them, but for Grandpa. Dad looked down at his father. I saw his chin tremble. For a second, I thought I saw genuine grief. "I'm sorry, Pop," Dad whispered. Then Mom nudged him. "Ask him," she hissed. It was low, but I heard it. Dad looked up at me. His eyes were red, watery. "Gabriel, this is a nice service. Expensive." "He deserved the best," I said coldly. Did he leave a will?" Dad asked. "We're in a bad way, son. If there's anything, insurance." "The house." My blood froze. Standing over his father's dead body, literally seconds after saying goodbye, he was asking about the inheritance. I looked at them. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt nothing. It was like looking at strangers. "There is a will," I said. "Mr. Carter will read it tomorrow. You can come to his office." "Thank you, Gabriel," Mom sniffled, dabbing her dry eyes. "We knew you'd do the right thing." The next day, in the mahogany-paneled conference room of Carter's law firm, the final act played out. Dad and Mom sat on one side of the table, looking anxious and hopeful. They were probably calculating how much a share of the estate would be. Grandpa had bonds, the old house proceeds, which Dad thought were gone but Grandpa had hidden in a trust years ago, and some savings. Mr. Carter opened the folder. "I, Elijah Davison, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." Carter read. He went through the standard legalese. Then came the distribution of assets. "To my son, Robert Davison, and his wife, Linda." Dad leaned forward, holding his breath. "I leave the sum of $1 each." Dad blinked. "What?" $1, Carter repeated. "And the following personal note. Use it to buy a scratch-off ticket. Maybe you'll get lucky." I already did, the day I chose Gabriel. Mom gasped. Dad turned purple. "That's illegal." He was coerced. Gabriel made him write that. "The will was videotaped and notarized 3 years ago, Mr. Davison," Carter said calmly. "Long before Gabriel won the lottery. Elijah anticipated your greed." "And to my grandson, Caleb," Carter continued, "I leave my collection of moral philosophy books, currently in storage. I hope he reads them. He needs them more than money." "And the rest?" Dad demanded. "The bonds? The savings? Everything else," Carter said, looking at me with a smile, "is left to the sole beneficiary, Gabriel Davison, to be used for the Phoenix Community Project." You thief," Mom screamed at me. "You have millions. You don't need his money. We are starving." I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. "You aren't starving," I said. "You're just hungry for things you didn't earn. Grandpa knew you better than anyone. He knew if he gave you money, it would go to a new boat or a lawyer for Caleb. He wanted his legacy to build homes, not wreck them." I placed 2 crisp $1 bills on the table. "Here's your inheritance. Don't spend it all in one place." I walked out. I heard them screaming at Carter as the elevator doors closed. It was the last time I ever saw them. I drove back to the hill. The house was quiet without Grandpa, but it wasn't empty. Nathan was there, fixing a leak in the pool filter. Sarah was in the kitchen, organizing the catering for the shelter's opening gala. I walked out to the garden, the Elijah garden. I sat on the stone bench Grandpa liked. I pulled out the old leather wallet. It was mine now. Inside, there was the winning lottery ticket stub which I had kept. And behind it, a folded piece of notebook paper I hadn't seen before. It was a letter, handwritten in shaky cursive. "Dear Gabriel, if you are reading this, I'm probably arguing with St. Peter about the entry fee. Don't mourn me too long. I've been ready to go see Grandma for a while. I want you to know something. You think the lottery saved you. You think the money changed your life. You are wrong. The money just amplified who you already were. If Caleb had won that money, he would be dead or in jail by now. If your father had won, he would be bankrupt in a year. You won because you were already a builder. You took the ashes and made bricks. The money was just the mortar. Do not let hate eat you up, son. Hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Let them go. Let them be small in their rearview mirror. You have a windshield full of mountains. Build that shelter. Help those boys who are sleeping on cots like you did. Be the father you never had. I love you, kid. You were my best investment. Love, Grandpa. I sat there for a long time. The sun dipped below the horizon, setting the sky on fire. Not a destructive fire this time, but a beautiful, radiant blaze. I looked at my phone. A notification from the bank. The monthly interest deposit had hit. It was a staggering number. But then I looked at the group chat with my team. Sarah. We have 50 families signed up for the first housing wave. This is happening. Nathan. Hey. Found a vintage Mustang shell. Thinking we restore it in memory of the old man? My treat. Tony, security boss. Everything quiet at the gate. Sleep well. I smiled. I realized then that Grandpa was right. The lottery ticket was just paper. The real jackpot was this. The peace. The purpose. The people who showed up when the house wasn't burning, but stayed to help rebuild it anyway. I stood up. I walked back into the house that was no longer a fortress, but a home. I called Nathan. Let's do the Mustang. Cherry red. He would have hated the color, which means it's perfect. You got it, boss. And Nate. Yeah. Don't call me boss. Call me brother. Because that's what he was. My name is Gabriel Davison. I lost my house, my parents, and my brother in a fire. But in the ashes I found a family. And trust me, the view from the other side of the flames is spectacular. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Toxic loyalty is a debt you never have to pay. We are taught from a young age that family is everything, and that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes blood is just biology. True family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by behavior. It's defined by who sits with you on the curb when the fire trucks leave. It's defined by who shares their sandwich when they have nothing else to give. My parents and brother taught me that you can live in a mansion and be spiritually homeless. Grandpa Elijah and Nathan taught me that you can sleep in a shelter and be a king if you have people who love you. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially those who are holding the matches. It is okay to walk away. It is okay to succeed without them. It is okay to choose yourself. So, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt guilty for cutting off a toxic family member? Or are you still struggling to make that cut? Drop a good in the comments if you agree that peace is more important than pretending. Or share your own Phoenix moment. A time you rose from the ashes. I read every single comment, and your stories give me strength. Thank you for listening. You are my family now. Stay strong and keep building.